In 2024, something happened that had never happened in the entire history of GitHub. Python knocked JavaScript off the top spot as the most used programming language on the platform. JavaScript had held that position for over a decade. Python didn't just catch up, it took the crown, and that was just the warning sign. What's happened since then is bigger, faster, and stranger than almost anyone predicted. Right now, in 2026, more people are learning Python than any programming language at any point in computing history. Not the most popular language among developers. The fastest growing skill demand tracked by any major employment index, period. And I want to spend the next few minutes showing you exactly why the entire world appears to be rushing toward the same skill at the same time. Because once you see the full picture, it stops looking like a trend and starts looking like something closer to a tectonic shift. Let's start with a number that should genuinely stop you. Demand for Python skills in the US tech sector grew 53% year over year in June of 2025. Not over 5 years, not over a decade. In 12 months, CompTIA, who has been tracking programming language demand for over 2 decades, called it the fastest single-year growth of any language they have ever measured. To put that number in human terms, if you were hiring Python developers in June of 2024 and you tried to hire the exact same number of people again exactly 1 year later, you'd be competing against 2.5 times as many companies chasing the same talent pool. That is what a genuine skills gold rush looks like from the inside. So why is this happening precisely now? The honest answer traces back to a single event. Most people don't connect to it directly. The release of ChatGPT in late 2022. When ChatGPT crossed 100 billion users faster than any consumer product in history, it didn't just create a viral news cycle. It triggered a structural shift in what every company on earth suddenly believed they needed to build. Overnight, businesses that had never once considered building an AI feature started asking their engineering teams, can we do this too? And the answer, in almost every case, ran through Python. Here's why that matters so much. PyTorch, the framework used to train most of the world's frontier AI models, is Python. Hugging Face, the platform hosting hundreds of thousands of open source AI models, is Python. LangChain and Llama Index, the two dominant frameworks for building AI agents right now, are Python. FastAPI, the framework companies use to actually deploy these AI systems into production, is Python. When a wave that large hits an entire industry, and every tool riding that wave happens to be written in one language, that language doesn't just grow, it becomes infrastructure. And that's precisely what's happened to Python over the last 3 years. Now let's look at the actual scale of what we're talking about, because the individual numbers here are almost hard to believe stacked next to each other. As of early 2026, Python holds 22.61% on the TIOB index, which has tracked programming language popularity for 23 years. That is the largest lead any language has ever held over its closest competitor in the entire history of that index. Not close, not competitive, the widest gap ever recorded. 57.9% of developers worldwide now use Python, a 7 percentage point jump in a single year, the single largest year-over-year gain any major language has ever posted. There are 22.9 million active Python developers on the planet right now, and that number is climbing by roughly 1 million people every year. Sit with that for a second. 1 million new Python developers every single year, joining a pool that already includes almost 23 million people. That is not a niche technical community anymore. That is a global movement, roughly the size of a mid-sized country's entire workforce. And here's the part that I think gets missed in most conversations about this trend. It's not confined to Silicon Valley, and it's not confined to tech companies. Python has quietly become the operating language of nearly every major industry on earth. When a hospital's AI system flags a potential diagnosis from a scan, that's Python. When Netflix recommends your next show with unsettling accuracy, that's Python. When a customer service chatbot actually understands what you typed, that's Python. When a hedge fund's algorithm executes a trade in milliseconds, that's Python orchestrating the pipeline. When a self-driving car's perception system decides whether to brake, the training infrastructure behind that model was almost certainly Python. This isn't one industry catching Python fever. This is every industry simultaneously discovering it needs the same underlying skill. Now let's talk about why the rush isn't slowing down. Because I think a lot of people assume this is a temporary bubble tied to the AI hype cycle, and the data says something different. AI job postings grew 74% year over year in 2005. Median AI engineer salary in the US crossed 185,000 in base pay alone. Senior specialist in LLM engineering and ML ops, the people building and maintaining these AI systems in production, are earning between 200,000 and 312,000 in base salary, with total compensation at top labs pushing past $400,000. And despite loud predictions that AI would shrink the developer job market by writing code itself, the US Bureau of Labor Statistics projects 15% employment growth for software developers through 2034. That's 5 times the average growth rate across every occupation tracked. 49,200 new developer positions are expected to open every single year for the next decade. The AI tools aren't replacing the need for people who understand Python. They're expanding it because every company adopting AI now needs someone who can actually build, deploy, and maintain the systems those tools produce. Here's what I think is the real story underneath all of this. We are watching, in real time, the formation of a new global default skill, the same way English became the default language of international business, or the same way basic computer literacy became a baseline expectation in the 1990s. Python is becoming the baseline technical literacy of the AI era, and the world figured that out roughly at the same moment, which is why the growth curve looks less like adoption and more like a stampede. 64,000 open Python positions exist in the US right now, today, as you're watching this. 40% of recruiters globally list Python as a required skill, the highest of any programming language on earth. PyPI, Python's package repository, now hosts over 815,000 open source libraries, the largest language specific ecosystem that has ever existed. And this isn't slowing down. Enterprise Python usage is forecast to grow another 25% to the end of 2025 alone, driven by AI infrastructure build-out that shows no sign of plateauing. The next wave, agentic AI systems that don't just answer questions but actually execute tasks autonomously, is being built almost entirely in Python right now, using frameworks like LangChain, AutoGen, and CrewAI. So when you ask why everyone seems to be rushing to learn Python in 2026, the honest answer is because for the first time in the history of programming languages, one language has positioned itself at the intersection of every major technological shift happening simultaneously: AI, automation, data, robotics, scientific research, enterprise infrastructure, all of it converging on the same skill at the same time, creating a demand curve unlike anything the industry has measured before. This isn't hype creating the rush. The rush is a rational response to what's actually happening in the job market, in enterprise infrastructure, and in the tools reshaping how every industry operates. The question this leaves you with isn't whether Python matters. That question has already been answered definitively by 22.9 million developers, by every major AI lab on the planet, and by job growth curve the Bureau of Labor Statistics itself didn't predict would move this fast. The only real question is whether you're going to be one of the million people joining that number this year, or whether you're going to watch from the sidelines while everyone around you gets there first. Tell me in the comments, have you already started learning, or is this the video that finally convinces you to? If this opened your eyes to something you hadn't fully connected before, hit like, subscribe, and send it to someone who's still on the fence. Because right now, this year, the rush is still happening. The only question left is whether you are in it or watching it happen to everyone else.